If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is Bruce McGuire.
And Sid Irwin.
And today we are using Sid Irwin's Mensa level IQ to dissect the Maura Murray series once again. This is part 39, Hit and Run 2, where we'll be continuing our look at the Petrit Vasi hit and run and whether or not there was a connection to Maura Murray or Maura Murray's Saturn, and whether or not her vehicle was involved in the hit and run, and what this all has to do with the strange goings on at UMass in Amherst, Massachusetts, which for some reason the mainstream official narrative spinners do not want to look at UMass or any of this strange activity, and these coincidence theorists maintain that no matter how many weird or bizarre instances or anomalies occur, they are all simply coincidences and have absolutely nothing to do with Maura ending up, if she did, in Haverhill, New Hampshire. All right. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. Also, like our Facebook page. We will be posting some exclusive content on there shortly, so make sure you're following the Facebook page. And you could also check us out: Twitter, Reddit, Patreon. All right, Sid, you haven't been on a Maura Murray show in a while, but what do you remember of the Maura Murray case, and where are you with what you think happened?
If I remember correctly, Moira had apparently supposedly disappeared in a car accident of sorts on a snowy night on this weird bend. They found the car, correct, but not her.
That is the official narrative, yes. But some people believe that she was never at the Saturn's final resting spot at the Weathered Barn Corner in Haverhill, New Hampshire. And because all we have is the testimony of Butch Atwood, who's ever-changing testimony, so he's the neighbor who happened to be a bus driver. None of the narratives add up. Supposedly the vehicle was moved numerous times. If you haven't checked out our previous podcasts on a staged accident, an earlier accident, and a new theory, check those out, recent podcasts out, because we go over extensively all the things that don't seem to add up. But for some reason, people continue to taking on blind faith as gospel truth with religious fervor that Maura Murray was at the final scene of the final Saturn's resting spot. The neighbors actually placed the Saturn in different locations, on one side of the street versus the other, closer to the corner, farther from the corner. It's all very, very bizarre. Nothing adds up, but for some reason, everybody just blindly goes along faith-based that the official narrative is what happened. But if it's not what happened, then logic and reason would see to re-examining that base layer of the house of cards we have here. Because if it's all a house of cards and everybody's just spinning off narratives and theories off things that aren't true, now, they may or may not be true. I'm not saying Maura wasn't at the final resting spot of the Saturn. Maybe she was. But why are we going to take on faith that she was? We have to examine this logically. we have to verify information. And for some reason, and this case is very unique, there's a lot of online personalities that are very against verifying any information. They're basically demanding everybody take on blind faith with religious fervor that what comes out of their mouth is true, and nobody could ever be mistaken or lying for any reason about Maura being there.
That's just insanity.
Yeah, this is a bizarre case. So her friends from UMass, so she had two friends, Kate Markopoulos, Sarah Alfieri. There was supposedly a dorm room party, but like everything in this case, we can't narrow it down. Apparently, the party might not have been at the dorms. It might have been at an apartment location associated with Petrit Vasi, or the landlord of Petrit Vasi. So, which is a guy that got hit on the Thursday night prior. She went missing Monday, February 9th, 2004. So the previous Saturday night is the Saturday night into Sunday morning she had an accident in her father's Corolla. So allegedly, we don't have 100% proof of that either. Now, the party may have been at Sarah Alfieri's dorm room, or it may have been an off-campus location, or it might have been both. If they were party hopping, she might have been at both locations. There is time that is missing in both of the accidents. Because between the time she left the party, between the time she allegedly left UMass to drive up to Haverhill, I mean, we have windows of time that are missing. She could have went to other locations, and this has not been verified. So regarding UMass, so Saturday into Sunday, early Sunday morning, she had another accident, and then the previous Thursday night, she works at a security desk. That Thursday night, she allegedly had some kind of emotional breakdown. That night happened to be the night when Petrit Vasi was hit by a vehicle shortly after midnight. And that's what we went over on the previous episode. There's a lot of inconsistencies. Some people are taking on blind faith that the Saturn was not responsible for the accident. Keep in mind, we don't know where the Saturn was. So again, this case is very unique in that we can't verify a lot of this information. And unlike other cases, for whatever reason, official narrative steerers and online personalities, they just get really bent out of shape when anybody wants to question the basic facts of the case to establish if they are actually facts or not. I don't know why people have a problem with that. It's kind of weird in this case. Very unique case.
It is extremely weird, especially when, after all, the information given is being changed up, not according to any influence by the personas themselves, rather by the witnesses themselves, and even the investigators. So
yeah, it's very, very strange. I mean, there's the black box was recovered from the Saturn. Now, for whatever reason, people are just taking on blind faith as gospel truth that the black box recorded information from the February 9th accident and not a prior accident. So this has been verified again and again by manuals and car engineers that the black box needs to be reset after it records information. It does not re-record. So whatever information it recorded, that could have been information from a previous accident, either a month prior or several months prior.
could it even be years?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess theoretically. But it wouldn't. It doesn't matter because if it's not from that night, if it's from a week before, that already changes everything. Because it's not from the Haverhill spin out, which doesn't make any sense. Because suppose the official narrative is that it hit trees. There's no trees for it to hit. There were no marks on trees. Accident reconstructionists, several different ones, have said that it didn't hit trees. Basically, it could have hit anything except trees. But there's still people that are pushing the narrative that it hit a tree. Very bizarre. So anyway, with the Petrit Vasi hit and run, and that particular year, give or take a year, when Petrit Vasi was hit in either direction, that was the most amount of hit and runs UMass. They had 5 to 7 hit and runs that year. Normally there's a couple. I mean, it is a college campus, and UMass is known as Zoomass. Big party school, a lot of drunk people going around, and careless people in the middle of the night. So there are hit and runs, but for whatever reason, around that year was when they just had an unusual amount. There were also drug busts in the dorm. There was also Whitey Bulger, the mobster that was killed in prison recently. His brother was the president of UMass.
Oh my!
So there's a lot of sketchy situation. I mean, the amount of sketchy situations in the Maura Murray case is never ending. This is why it's such a unique case. It's a mysterious disappearance. We don't know why she left UMass, or even if she left UMass, because all we have is hearsay. We have rumor mill testimony that has not been corroborated. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But why would we take that on faith? It doesn't make any sense. All right, so what do you think happened? Do you think her friends at UMass know something? Because one of the theories is that if she was involved in the hit and run. Now, my theory is she might have not been involved in the hit and run personally, but if someone else used her car either with or without her permission. Could the car have been responsible? Or let's say it wasn't. I mean, she also kept calling Domino's after closing. So she probably knew someone there. And then she was busted for credit card fraud. I don't know if you remember that detail. You do?
Yes.
Oh, wow. A non-Maxwell Powers moment by Sid Irwin. So, yeah, so again, we don't know what happened there. Did she cover for someone else and accept the blame? Or was she kind of hoodwinked or coerced because they're spending all this money on some minute charge? It's like $80 or something. It was a very small amount of money, and they're using all this taxpayer money to try. They set up a sting operation to catch someone for using this, a couple dozens worth of dollars. Isn't that kind of weird?
Extremely weird.
I mean, how much did it cost to pay all those officers to set that? I mean, I don't know. It's all weird. Then they take a mugshot in the dorm room hallway. Some people say the mugshot does not quite look like Maura. So it's weird. Some people say the mugshot is photoshopped. I mean, we really don't know what's going on or how far reaching all of this is. Are UMass police involved or Amherst PD involved? Was it involved? Is there a whole FBI CI situation where they're covering all this up, possibly for a good reason, possibly for nefarious reasons if some of the officers were involved in some of the drug business, or it's part of some bigger case that they don't want compromised. And they told everybody to be quiet when the FBI visited campus. So it's all very, very unusual. But yeah, so if Maura is a CI and she's involved in some shady people, maybe her Saturn was not involved. Maybe her Saturn was not involved in the accident, but the accident is still related because of Petrit Vasi's landlord, the Albanian-Iranian connection. Because a lot of these, this landlord had the coincidences run deep. I went over them on the previous podcast on all these different coincidences with a lot of the same people being involved. The towing company that towed the Corolla being owned by some of the same landlords of Petrit Vasi's building, or some of the other businesses in the area. Everybody knows everybody. It's weird. It's definitely very weird. I don't know why people have a problem with people investigating. If this is all unrelated, that's fine. Shouldn't that be definitively ruled out? Isn't that how an honest investigation is conducted? You rule things out.
This is true. You're supposed to investigate, explore as much detail as possible, and narrow it down.
So Sarah Alfieri and Kate Markopoulos both apparently went. They had some initial interviews and then they went dead silent, and they did not go up to New Hampshire to look for Maura. Some people say that's suspicious if they had something to do with Maura going missing, or I postulated that if the FBI or some other agency told them to not say anything to anyone for any reason, to either protect a case or protect some undercover agent or whatnot, if that's what happened, that could explain that. So they could be Maura's real friends. We don't know, or they could not, and maybe they set her up. We really don't know anything. It's just this is all theorizing and not taking on blind faith anything. So what do you think happened to Maura Murray, Sid Irwin? Use your Mensa IQ to connect these dots and come up with a theory.
If I remember correctly, since with all the changing testimonies from the witnesses, I remember one initial theory was the fact that they assumed that she may have been taken in by the said community within the area where the crash occurred, and they're just keeping her or killed her, whatever means or reasons that they may have had. But to me, I don't find that to be valid, only for the simple fact that if that's the case, then why is everybody's story change continuously? It just keeps bringing more eyes upon them.
And you are aware that the first official responding officer, Cecil Smith, allegedly committed suicide.
Yes, I do remember that.
Last year, yes. And the timeline with searching that new house location, which was not searched properly, that is interesting. And supposedly, the New Hampshire State Police visited him the day of his alleged suicide, and allegedly there were 2 guns found. I don't know. There's supposed to be a thorough investigation to give an official cause of death, right? I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't suicide, but again, is it scientific and logical to take things on blind faith just because they were reported?
I have to agree that it isn't logical at all.
Yeah, I don't know why so many people have a problem with people being objective. There's no reason. I'm not saying to disbelieve it. I'm saying there's no reason to believe or disbelieve until you do a proper honest, objective investigation. No one is guilty. No one is innocent. It's just you investigate everything, because I've postulated that Cecil Smith might have been the good guy. Because if Jeff Williams, the drunk police chief, allegedly at the time, who drove around drunk, supposedly, numerous people have stated that. Whether these are just rumors or it's true, I don't know. But if Cecil was kind of intimidated, or because supposedly he had a neurological condition, and at the time, I don't know at which point it manifested, to which degree. I don't think anybody knows. But if these people are taking advantage of a guy that has neurological condition, that's really messed up. Whether it's Jeff Williams, John Monahan, the state police, that's really, really messed up. But if he's the good guy, I don't know. But yes, there were ever-changing storylines, and a lot of things don't add up. But so you don't believe it's multiple people in the community involved. So do you think she made it up to New Hampshire, or do you think that's part of a weird narrative that was spun to cover something up that happened at UMass?
Now, in those regards, for me personally, I like to think that she may have gone up to New Hampshire for whatever reasons that she may have chosen. Because I do remember, weren't there also tickets that she had supposedly bought, like to a hotel or for a trip that she was supposed to take?
No.
No?
She had directions. She had directions to several different places. Now, again, we're going to be going into some more of those specifics and trip routes and all those things in a future episode. But yes, it's very hard to corroborate exactly what was in her vehicle, because there's different lists with different things in the vehicle. She had directions with her. As far as tickets, are you thinking about Alden Olson's post where he posted Bretton Woods ski lift tickets?
Oh yes, I think that might be what I'm thinking.
Wow, another non-Maxwell Powers moment. Okay, yes, we don't know if that has anything to do with Maura, though. We've covered Alden Olson extensively. We did a whole podcast on Alden Olson, and we've brought him up numerous times. If you haven't checked out Fringe Theories, if you haven't checked out that podcast episode of the Maura Murray series, we go over some of his more out there theories, some even involving presidential candidates like Mitt Romney. Alden Olson is definitely an interesting character with some bizarre connections, and he's uncovered a lot of weird things, including mechanics who possibly saw both the Saturn and the Corolla. Why are they looking at both in the Maura Murray case? We really don't. We don't know any of that information. But anyway, go on with your point. There were no proven tickets linked to Maura Murray.
But still, with directions in her car, so that would
But we don't know. We don't know when the directions were put there, because a lot of college students have messy cars. She could have. This was an area. I don't know if she frequented Haverhill specifically, but people have uncovered that apparently her family did know people in Haverhill. Now, we're not going to go over that specifically in this episode either, but we have a lot more episodes coming. We're kind of slowing down a little bit, but there's a lot more information to get out there, because, like I said, this is one of the most bizarre, multi-layered cases ever. And if everything is a coincidence, I don't know, that might be a bridge too far for some people. So I'm going to invoke true Occam's razor. And I've mentioned this before. The real Occam's razor does not state the simplest explanation is more likely to be true. It states all things being equal. If two scenarios equally explain something well, the simpler one should be used and is more likely to be true. And that's also disputed. Occam's razor is kind of a medieval hangover of thought. So it's kind of outdated, because science is not always simple. I mean, it's the human DNA code is complex. I mean, there's infinite examples of something being more complex in nature being true over something simple. But even if we accept the premise that the simpler is more likely to be true, that's only if they both explain it adequately. So so obviously it's easy to say, oh, well, Maura was just a drunk driver, and then she wandered in the woods, got lost, and died. That's kind of simple. It happens sometimes. But when you factor in all the searches, when you factor in the inconsistent testimonies, when you factor in all the shadiness, when you factor in West Point professors descending upon Haverhill to immediately interview the neighbors, I mean, this is a DUI walk away. How often do the college professor friends of the boyfriend come in to interview neighbors where a missing girlfriend was an alleged DUI walk away?
Which is again strange, and this is why I wanted to say this, because again, like you said, with the True Uncle's Razor, which is a great reference point to put in for this thought that I'm having, or at least my opinion, is that again, as you said, they never discovered the body, so it's a little weird. So even with the directions, I'm just, whether they're put in later or sooner, not entirely important. It's just the fact that with said directions, it could even be a misdirection by having those. So there's a chance that she could have either like for whatever reasons, staged the car there herself, got out, and had planned to meet someplace else. Or she could have been there, could have been an accident, she could have been taken by somebody else. Or again, it could be staged by some sort of a either CIA or some sort of OPSEC to put her in some sort of witness protection and a falsified death, though not leaving any sort of body to reference or check. Or again, still with the level of misdirection, she could not have been there, and all of these scenarios could have happened, but she could have been under her control in some different area that she could have left. And the car is just, in and of itself, a giant misdirection.
Very, very interesting thought, Sid. And a lot of people share those thoughts. We don't know what's a misdirection and not a misdirection, but bringing up other agencies, as we've covered in previous episodes, the U.S. Marshals were interested in Haverhill that night. So were DEA. There was an actual undercover DEA flagged vehicle with a Texas license plate in Haverhill that night. Are these all coincidences? If you're invoking true Occam's razor and not the common misconception, misused version, which you see all over the internet in many cases, it's like, oh, Occam's razor states the simplest explanation. No, it does not. Occam's razor states the explanation that more accurately explains something should be used, even if it's more complex. It actually explicitly states that if the more complex explanation is more accurate, it should be used. The more complex should be used, not the simpler. And how often, I've brought this up many times, how often do you have two scenarios, scenario A, scenario B, that both equally explain something well? That's very rare where you have two, but that's what Occam's razor is. When you do have two explanations that equally explain something well, the simpler one should be used. And it's amazing how many of these illogical true crime fans out there just continue invoking Occam's razor incorrectly. And it's weird. You're not going to get to the truth that way. If like the case would already have been solved if it was something that simple. And for some reason, a lot of people don't understand that. But all right. So now that you've given your thoughts on all the misdirection and all that, do you have a specific theory that you're leaning towards, or you just kind of have them all on the table as of the moment?
Well, in absolute fairness, well, like again, any concrete evidence, it's just concrete evidence to not only to prove but to also disprove any of the theories specifically. It does leave them all on the table. So if I had to pick one that I lean the closest to, my thoughts was that she may have, well, at least with two of them, either personally left by herself on her own for whatever reason she may have had. I'm not trying to say she may have staged this particular scenario. Maybe she may have given the car and things may have happened and gone awry. But the other is also that she may have been taken, or at least if not taken. Those are my two, which I'll lean towards. But that's just probably just her leaving for whatever reasons on her own. With help, potentially.
Yeah, here's the theory we haven't talked about actually on MindShock yet, believe it or not, because we've actually gone over a lot of theories. What if she was planning to leave, and possibly even that Saturday night when she got into the other accident because somebody was trying to prevent her from leaving? What if that was the plan? She wanted to go away to start a new life, and then that plan got interrupted. That's why there's pieces of evidence pointing in that direction that that's what she was trying to do. I mean, James Renner has covered the case extensively. That was his initial theory, is that she ran away from the men in her life, etc. And there is evidence of that. Now, what if something else also happened that involves another agency? Now, we don't know if it's good or bad. Again, we don't know if these other agency personnel are acting nefariously or they're acting this way to protect the case and try to, bring criminals to justice. Because if that's the case, that might be standard operating procedure to a certain extent.
So you're suggesting both could be true?
Yes, I am. Let us not fall for black and white fallacies on MINDSHOCK. I'm saying if this, I've also postulated on my new theory, the McGuire theory, if Cecil Smith thought Jeff Williams was responsible and he hit Maura while drunk, and that's why there was some kind of police cover-up or something where things were, staged in a certain way, he was covering up for something, there was a cover-up for something that didn't actually happen, but they thought it happened. Because that explains a lot of things as well.
It could, yeah, it would.
And I think all this black and white thinking is the reason why a lot of cases remain unsolved. A lot of cold cases. Everybody thinks things should fit neatly in one little box or another. That's not life. That's not how it works. I mean, yeah, sure, sometimes it works out that way. But in the cases that it does work out that way, I would say those cases are usually the ones that are solved. In the unsolved ones, if you've gone back to square one, which again, in the Maura Murray case, a lot of people, for whatever reason, they refuse to go back to square one and re-examine every single claim made as fact for its veracity. Because if the base layer of facts aren't actually true, or at least unsubstantiated, maybe they're true, maybe they're not, that leaves room to explore other theories which may also be true. And if you don't explore them, how would you ever find out the truth if you're refusing to even explore certain theories?
That's extremely true. You have to.
All right, I went over, so Renner was instrumental in getting the police reports on Petrit Vasi's hit and run. We went over them in the previous episode, but there's a couple things we did not go over. Here's a couple more things. There's an Anthony's Pier 4 connection. So that Saturday, apparently, the Saturn was sighted by someone. Do you remember this sighting?
Vaguely. My apologies.
All right, so Pier 4 is a waterfront plaza in Boston, Massachusetts. So Pier 4 Plaza connects to the Boston Harbor Walk and the Institute of Contemporary Art. Okay. Is there another art connection in the Maura Murray case? In the next episode, we'll be going over the art gallery. One of the most overlooked aspects in the Maura Murray case, particularly of what went on at UMass. So stick around for the next episode. We'll be going over that connection. But this is Pier 4 Waterfront Plaza. There's the Harbor Walk, the Institute of Contemporary Art. This is known as the Innovation District of the Seaport area of Boston. So Anthony's Pier 4 was a restaurant. So what connections are here? So as I mentioned before, so Whitey Bulger's brother was the chancellor of UMass. That's weird. And Whitey Bulger allegedly did a lot of activity in New Hampshire as well.
So it'd be especially if you go under potential chance that his brother, who was running UMass, is also affiliated in some way to connections with any sort of drug running.
Well, also keep in mind, Whitey Bulger himself was an informant for the FBI as well. And some people believe that's why he got away with a lot of his crimes, because he was also an informant.
Very intriguing.
Yes. So here's the connection. So, and of course, they were big in Boston as well, crime and all that. Okay. Somebody emailed James Renner in 2013. This person happened to be investigating Whitey Bulger. Is there enough coincidences for you here, Sid, yet, or no?
Yes. Yeah, please continue.
We're about to get even crazier, Sid. You're in for a major mind shock. We're going to come up with one of the biggest mind shocks yet in a moment. Let me just lay the foundation. So this individual, in 2013, he's doing research into Whitey Bulger, and he's photographing Boston. So allegedly, He photographed Maura Murray's Saturn in one of the pictures. So this is in 2004. He contacted Renner in 2013, but this happened in 2004. So he said the license plate on Maura's Saturn was her license plate. And this was the Saturday before she disappeared. He wasn't 100% sure on the day. He said it was possibly Saturday. So I guess now keep in mind there was a snowstorm on Friday. Classes were canceled. So is this an unusual lead up to her disappearance? We have so many unusual things happening back to back. We have Thursday night, the hit and run, the emotional breakdown, the late calls to Domino's. We have Saturday, then we have Friday, snowstorm, but allegedly Fred Murray comes to town with $4,000, and we'll be getting to that in a moment as well. And classes are canceled. Saturday, allegedly this guy possibly gets Maura's Saturn in Boston. Did it ever come back to UMass? Because this is something I brought up in the previous podcast. Do we have verifiable proof that the Saturn was even on campus in the days leading up to her disappearance? Because if it was in Boston, and then from Boston it went to New Hampshire because somebody else moved it, either Maura or not Maura, we don't know. Like, what's going on here? So, and then that Saturday night, we have the dorm room party, then the accident in the Corolla in Hadley. Then Maura does not go back to her dorm for some reason, and for some reason she left her dorm if she was at her dorm. Because do we really even know the Hadley accident with the Corolla happened her leaving the dorm? Because what if she was somewhere else? Can we trust any of these people involved? Are we going to take their testimony on blind faith as true? As we all know, humans have been known to either lie or be mistaken. Why are people shocked by that? It's weird. It's like when you don't want to take someone's word for something on blind faith with religious fervor, people start attacking you. I mean, you can look at this mess on the case online. Anybody who isn't willing to take a human's word on blind faith is basically derided for some reason. Are we going to trust the words of humans as gospel truth, as if humans cannot lie, cannot be intimidated or scared into saying something untrue, or simply be mistaken? They might think they're telling the truth, but they're not. That happens every day to everybody. I mean, why is that so shocking? Do you have any theories on that, Sid?
I believe that's just the truest mind shock of them all.
Yeah, so we have a bizarre lead up. So if she's either there's a dorm room party or there's not, there's an accident with the Corolla. There is a police report. Ruddock was the officer. Allegedly, if Maura was drunk, why did she get off without, like, how was she not arrested for a DUI? We don't know. Was she even the one driving? We don't know. There was an unnamed UMass police cadet on the scene. To this day, remains unidentified. We don't know why. And so this is the lead up to her disappearance. And on Sunday, allegedly, she works at the art gallery with Sarah Alfieri. Sarah Alfieri said that Maura didn't even mention the previous night's accident to her. Now, I would dispute everything that happened on Sunday except for this. Allegedly, that early morning, because she goes to her dad's hotel after the accident, she gets towed to his hotel. And which coincidentally, we have the insurance adjuster also happen to be connected to this whole mess, but well, all right, hold on. This is also bizarre. Laying it out in these terms, like the coincidence stack is so high. I mean, it's bizarre. So she talks to Billy Roush, her boyfriend, that early that morning. We don't know the contents of the conversation. Billy obviously knows more that he's telling. Maybe he's the good guy, maybe he's the bad guy, we don't know. And that night she spoke, if she didn't speak to her father that night, so that's after 11 p.m., and she has to get the accident forms for the Corolla accident. She speaks to him that night. If we didn't have that piece of information, I might even postulate she never got her phone back. Because she allegedly left her phone at the dorm party. So her phone was missing for a period of time. So once again, if we have some CI situation and criminals involved, if they got her phone, if Kate Markopoulos' family member or whoever was involved in something criminal, if they took the phone without anybody knowing, they discovered that Maura was I don't know, sending text to the police or some kind of CI situation, I would think they would do a good job of keeping that under wraps. But there was another UMass CI that was actually killed. So there's precedent for CIs not being adequately protected. So we don't know what's going on. If somebody else got her phone, there could have been malicious intent there. So, oh man, is that enough of a backstory for you, Sid? Are you following all this?
For the most part, yes, I am.
Oh wow, that's surprisingly anti-Maxwell. All right, so yes, so this Saturday, allegedly, Maura's Saturn might have been photographed in Boston by Anthony's Pier 4. Okay, so on this day, allegedly, Fred Murray's in town with Maura and they're trying to buy a new car. This is what he said the $4,000 was used for. So also keep in mind, this person who informed Renner, he never actually followed through with the photos.
Okay.
So, yeah, some people believe that that whole story was BS. Other people think someone might have got to the guy. If this is some kind of FBI, CIA situation, is that hard to believe? I mean, I understand that for most people, they're going to appeal to incredulity. They're going to use the appeal to incredulity fallacy to dismiss any and all involvement by higher agencies. But let's theorize for a moment. If this is true, I'm not saying it is. I'm not pushing this theory in any way. I'm just saying if it's true, would it be out of the realm of possibility for the CIA or whoever to intercept online messages?
No, not at all.
Coincidentally, Billy Roush actually worked for propaganda intel in the military. Are you sure you're keeping track of all this, Sid? This is bizarre.
Extremely bizarre, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah, so, and then, of course, do you remember that Fred Murray actually sued the state to try to get documents, but most of them were denied?
I do remember that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so, yeah, we have this connection to Boston, Anthony's Pier 4, and now we're gonna do another connection now. That was the Pier 4 sighting. Some people think it's legitimate, some people think it is not. So, who was Anthony's Pier 4 owned by? Oh, by the way, it's also not that far from UMass's Boston campus. Okay, so it was owned by the Athenas family. So they, for whatever reason, they wanted people to believe that they were Greek, but they were actually Albanian. All right, Kate Markopoulos is Greek. Petrit Vasi is Albanian. Out of all the ethnicities, do you find it strange? Because Greek and Albanian are not the most common. I mean, if you said Italian, Irish, I mean, there's so many common ethnicities. Greek and Albanian are not necessarily the first that come to mind. I mean, if you go out in the street and you bump into somebody, are they going to be Greek or Albanian? I mean, they might be, but statistically, if you go outside, ask a bunch of people. So, is this is this just coincidental? How many coincidences are we going to stack here? Maybe it is. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I find it kind of strange. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not sure. So this is people researching this online, so I don't know exactly all of the details of this. They're saying that Petrit Vasi was either from Dorchester or South Boston, and he's Albanian. For whatever reason, the Athenas family wanted people to believe that they were Greek. I don't know why they would do that, but I don't know. It was also reported that there was an anonymous phone call from a female calling Bay State Hospital, where Petrit Vasi was located, asking about his condition. Now, if that phone call, so okay, you ever see that movie Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman?
I have.
So, if there is all this mass surveillance and all phone calls are recorded, I mean, this is a hospital too. So do you think that from 2004, there's a recording that exists? Because if that's Maura's voice on the call, or if that's Kate Markopoulos' voice, or if it's whoever's voice, if they could identify the voice, why would an anonymous individual be calling the hospital about Petrit Vasi's condition? Because if it was a close friend, they'd probably just show up, right? Or they would ask one of Petrit's family, whatever. Is an anonymous phone call the way you would go about it?
I personally couldn't see it that way between close friends, unless, of course, they're trying to tell me that a close friend just wants to check in but can't personally give out their name, location, or any other data in fear that such places might be monitored.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's kind of strange. And keep in mind that Monday morning was when there was an announcement to UMass that Petrit Vasi was in a hit and run and he was in a coma. So they didn't know if he would survive or not. That's Monday morning that announcement is made, and then Maura's gone that day. Is that another coincidence?
Huh.
I mean, how many coincidences do we have here? It's just kind of bizarre. So if we're going with this, with Maura's Saturn being sighted at Pier 4, if that's true, I mean, somebody else could have, if somebody took Maura's Saturn, hit Petrit Vasi, they could have been blackmailing her as well, which may or may not be connected to the CI angle, if the CI angle is true or not. So, okay. So obviously the FBI also has an office in Boston, and supposedly years prior, the Irish mob was responsible for dumping murdered bodies in the parking lot of Pier 4. Not too strange. Out of all these coincidences, I'd probably dismiss that one first of all, because it was just, it's not like that happened that weekend. And there are connections of Maura to Ireland. There were anonymous tips saying that she was sighted in Ireland. I think Fred Murray was either planning on going to Ireland to look for her or something of that nature. And then some people who look carefully at Fred Murray, so getting into West Point is not that easy. You need to have recommendations and all of that. And Maura was actually recommended by Kennedy to West Point. Did you know that?
Or is it not?
So yes, Senator Ted Kennedy recommended Maura to West Point. You know, another coincidences, Maura Murray lived in. Do you know what the dorms were called in UMass? Kennedy Hall. So Maura Murray gets recommended by Kennedy to go to West Point. She has a recommendation from Kennedy to go to West Point. Now, a lot of people wonder, how did she get that recommendation? But in either case, she leaves West Point, and then she happens to live in Kennedy Hall dorm. Out of all the dorms, she's in Kennedy. Again, probably just a coincidence, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's not a coincidence. It's just when the coincidence stack is this high, like, you know. What do you want to do with this coincidence stack, Sid?
Thinking about it. Let's see, if it's a lot to process right now. Just thinking about it. It's just odd and strange. I don't know. What about you?
I don't know what to do with any of it, man. That's why we're on episode 39.
This is very true. It's a jumbled mess that needs to get sorted.
Let's get to the $4,000. So, a lot of people, they think the fourth. So this is another scary theory. If people that knew Petrit Vasi owned, all right. So Reliance Auto. So Maura Murray called, or Maura Murray's phone, more accurately, placed a call to Reliance Auto. And it has an auto body shop, and it specializes in selling used cars that have salvage titles. So between insurance adjusters, tow companies, and landlords, the guy that owns Reliance Auto is connected to all these people. So I postulated that one of the darker theories, what if Fred and Maura were trying to either sell her car or get it repaired for the hit and run? And if Petrit Vasi was somehow involved in some kind of drug situation or connected to some people, they found out about it, they knew, and they somehow, they would have done something to Maura, right? Because these people are trying to get their car fixed that was responsible for hitting some guy that's associated with them, right?
Very true. I see the potential in that.
So yeah, the 4,000. So Fred Murray allegedly took $4,000 out of numerous ATMs, and he said it was for a new car to replace the Saturn. That's the official story there. Some people don't buy it. So allegedly, another coincidence. Supposedly, there was $4,000 of back taxes owned on an address that Fred Murray owned with his brother in Weymouth. And yeah, that's kind of bizarre. So Fred lived in that house, then he moved to Hanson when he got married, but then he moved back when he got divorced. He lived there until 2005. And James Renner has postulated theories about this house. Supposedly, someone researched the house and found that there was exactly $4,000 in back taxes owed. And technically, it might have been owned by the brother and not Fred. I don't know. Yes. So either way, another possible coincidence in the case.
Still, though, I mean, the exact numbers of just that, it's a bit odd. Not saying impossible, but still a bit odd.
Yeah, I don't know. And so anyway, the official reason he goes to Amherst to go car shopping with Maura Murray, although supposedly there's no corroboration of this fact. And some people think that the money was to either repair the Saturn or something of that nature. So yeah, it's kind of, I mean, the whole thing is kind of weird because he goes to different ATMs to get the cash, but banks are open on Saturday, so you could just go into the bank. I don't know.
So, actually, even with the going to ATMs, they still take pictures of the person.
Yes, and those have, as far as I know, those have never been released, so we don't know what the corroboration is of that, or if Maura was with them, or if the Saturn's in the background. There's a lot we don't know here. So I don't know. Some people say some people say that Maura never even drove the Saturn. So, and then we don't know why she even had his Corolla. Because if the Saturn, I don't know. Yeah, people around, the people that spoke about it around UMass and her friends, they said that Maura never drove the Saturn. So, we really don't know.
It's even more intriguing.
So other people speculate that the $4,000 was to be used for an apartment or something else, because if Maura was planning on leaving UMass, and there is evidence that she was actually looking for a bartending job and a couple other things that aren't mentioned too much, it could have been for something completely different.
No, that seems like too small. That's but what if Moira was taken? There's blackmail involved.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. If someone used Maura's Saturn for the hit and run, they were blackmailing her and they needed cash fast, and Maura calls Fred to help her out. That's why he arrives that quickly, and there's a snowstorm going on. I mean, yeah. And he's afraid. If he's afraid whoever was blackmailing her took her, of course he's not going to tell everybody what the $4,000 was really used for, or was to be used for. Now, the real question is, did he tell authorities or not? Was he scared to the point, unless they were the authorities, how messed up would it be if it was one of the if the UMass security cadet, if he's not a good guy, because he could be a good guy or a bad guy. He could have, if he's a good guy, he might be the only reason that Maura actually walked away from the Hadley accident.
True.
If he's a bad guy, he could have been responsible for the accident, and who knows? The police showed up before anything else could happen. But yeah, if the UMass police cadet was the one blackmailing, or possibly, like, let's say, I know these are some theoretically far-fetched scenarios, but clearly we're not dealing with a regular case here. What if it was some kind of rogue undercover FBI agent that was doing all this?
Oh my.
Because they could intimidate everybody. They flash their FBI badge to Kate and Sarah, and they're like, don't ever talk about this.
That is a very good thought.
And they could control even local law enforcement to an extent. So if it's just one bad guy who happens to be an FBI agent.
Could. Though I wonder if they would ever call, at least with the local authorities, would ever call in and check and see about
But even if they did, if that FBI agent is legitimately undercover, they would never divulge that. So if it's an undercover FBI agent, he's pretty much safe to do whatever he wants, right? Because he's under the cover.
Essentially, so yes. Though, in those situations, normally when they, I don't know if they would have a handler, but still.
All right, the final mind shock of the Petrit Vasi hit and run. Are you ready for this, Sid?
Indeed, as ready as I can be.
Some people postulate that Fred Murray might have arrived earlier, and Fred Murray's Corolla was actually used in the Petrit Vasi hit and run.
Oh my.
Okay, there's even more bizarreness, and this is something we haven't really discussed. And some very, very astute Redditors have brought this up on our Reddit, actually. I'm gonna read a post right here concerning law enforcement taking the tailpipe exhaust from the Saturn as evidence. Could there have been a GPS tracking device in there? So the exhaust years later was removed to be tested, which is kind of bizarre. I mean, wouldn't they do that initially? I don't know. And why they do it, I don't know. Okay, so this person, I was watching Snapped, the TV show, and the stalking murder victim had found a tracking device in his right wheel well and exhaust pipe. Also, I found this. I'm not saying law enforcement or feds necessarily had a tracking device on the Saturn, or did they? Just that this article describes an incident where the FBI actually did put a GPS tracker on a magnet in a student's car exhaust system. So, this is from an article, October 7th, 2010. Caught spying on student, FBI demands GPS tracker back. This is from Wired.com. A California student got a visit from the FBI this week after he found a secret GPS tracking device on his car, and a friend posted photos of it online. The post prompted wide speculation about whether the device was real, whether the young Arab American was being targeted in a terrorism investigation, and what the authorities would do. It took just 48 hours to find out. The device was real. The student was being secretly tracked, and the FBI wanted its expensive device back, the student told Wired.com in an interview. The answer came when half a dozen FBI agents and police officers appeared at his apartment, demanding he return the device. And this guy was a 20-year-old U.S.-born citizen, cooperated willingly, and said he'd done nothing to merit attention from authorities. Comments the agents made during their visit suggested he'd been under FBI surveillance for 3 to 6 months. An FBI spokesperson wouldn't acknowledge that the device belonged to the agents or to the agency, or the agents appeared at his house. So that's weird. Do you think that's a good use of taxpayer money? I'm not talking about the tracking device. I'm talking about half a dozen FBI agents and police officers. I mean, wouldn't sending one guy be good enough? I mean, all these people are getting paid to harass some random American citizen. Who isn't that kind of weird?
Sure weird.
So another garage owner confirmed for Wired.com that he saw the device. A closer inspection showed it connect to a battery pack and transmitter, which were attached to the car with a magnet. Okay. A reader confirmed it was an Orion Guardian ST820 tracking device made by a company called Cobham, which sells the device only to law enforcement. Points to consider. Technically speaking, like MINDSHOCK wisely said, anyone could have put a GPS tracker in the Saturn, not exclusively law enforcement or FBI. Having prior knowledge of the location of the Saturn using GPS might explain a few things. For example, it might explain how law enforcement seemed to have prior knowledge of who was driving the car. Could have been Julie, Kathleen, Maura, a friend, etc. Law enforcement knew it was a girl from Butch, but how did they know it was exactly Maura for the Bolo report just hours after being at the accident site, unless law enforcement lied and did search the Saturn on the night? Knowing the location of the Saturn may have aided someone in having access to Maura without her knowledge, possibly for nefarious purposes. If law enforcement put the tracker in the tailpipe, it might be related to the grand jury 2007 FOIA, where law enforcement legal paperwork mentioned, quote, one-way communication wires and listening devices, end quote, could refer to the GPS. Was Maura working with law enforcement, for example, as a CI, or was she being investigated by law enforcement?
Those are some relatively solid theories. Remember how these were words mentioned before. And again, it's distinctly possible as being especially able to put into account one of the skilled, elaborate staging of the accident. So who knows? Maybe that could be something completely unrelated to murder in of itself, and only believed to be due to the accounts given in the vehicle involved.
I think another point we didn't talk about. So I think I mentioned this on the Drug Mule podcast. Black Saturns, like the one Maura had, were actually the most common used drug courier vehicles in that time frame. What do you think about that?
Like I was saying earlier, I think it could be possible. So at the same time, that would also, like in my thought process, could even open up the possibility, although weird, that perhaps even to say Moira may not even be involved in the accident itself per se, that maybe someone else could have taken her vehicle and gotten her into said accident that just happens to look very similar to Moira.
You know, another thing that we don't talk about. What if somebody stole Maura's Saturn?
That's what I'm saying.
Like not even somebody that knew her. Like
Oh,
someone just looking to steal a vehicle, then either they hit Petrit Vasi or they don't. But the vehicle was stolen, possibly taken to Boston to be sold for salvage or whatnot. Who knows? And for whatever reason, I don't know why they wouldn't say this. If Maura thought the Saturn was responsible for the hit and run, I don't know. Wouldn't it still be better to report it stolen? Because then somebody stole it. She wasn't. I mean, that would get her off the hook for that. Like, I mean, unless I don't know why, but let's say it was stolen. So here's another fun fact.
right.
In 2004, the 1995 Saturn SL was the most stolen vehicle in the United States. Follow. Is this another coincidence, Sid? I mean, have you had enough yet?
That's interesting.
So it was followed closely by the 94 Saturn SL. This is from NBCnews.com. 1 out of every 200 registered 95 Saturn SLs was stolen in 2003. Thieves targeted most, according to Chicago-based CCC Information Services, an insurance industry tracker of trends in theft and vehicle damage. Saturn spokeswoman Sue Holmgren said the brand, a division of General Motors Corporation, had no internal data showing high theft rates, but she noted the automaker had made specific changes to the ignition system since 95. One enhancement has a feature that disables the vehicle's fuel supply if it's started without a key. That's kind of interesting. Okay, so if someone did steal Maura's vehicle, I mean, Maura's vehicle was a 96 Saturn, but still looks similar enough, right?
Right.
So yeah, if it was a car, again, statistically, we're looking at, especially if her car was around Boston or Amherst. I mean, these are not particularly the lowest crime areas in the country. Amherst and UMass in particular have particularly high crime rates as far as colleges go. So yeah, somebody could have stolen Maura's Saturn.
And like I said, that's as you see the potential in that. And that would open up some different avenues. But yeah, as you said before, it would make more sense to report that the said Saturn was stolen. Thus to, like you said, avoid issues such as with the Petrit Vasi hit and run.
All right, let's touch back to Alden Olson's post. He posted this. This was on Topics, November 16th, 2012. Something puzzles me. A Massachusetts guy with 20 years auto body experience who says he saw the Saturn in person not long before it left Massachusetts and then saw photos of it taken after it was parked at Twin Mountain in New Hampshire said that the front end of the car had sustained 2 separate impacts. The first impact, he said, looked as if a person or similar kind of object had rolled across the hood, which was the only impact he claimed to have seen while looking at the car in person in Massachusetts. He pointed out how this happened. The second impact, he speculated, was caused by something else, but he didn't know what. He was also present when the police closely inspected the Corolla. I'm not sure what this means, if anything. Any ideas? I talked with him a few years ago. I showed a photo of the Saturn to, okay, Presumably, if the cops looking at the Corolla knew its owner, which they did, then they also knew from RMV records about his ownership of the Saturn. Because technically, Fred Murray had the Saturn. He was the owner and he had it registered in his name, which at that point was still a few hours from being discovered abandoned in New Hampshire. Considering the fact that the police were looking for a vehicle that might be involved in a potential case of motor vehicle homicide, it seems logical to assume they would want to know where the Saturn was too. Since the auto body guy had already talked with police about what he knew, I saw no harm in posting that information, years old by then, online. A few hours later, after dark, someone lightly vandalized my backyard. They stripped the cables from my lawnmower and threw around some cross sections of a recently felled maple tree. This neighborhood is exceptionally safe. In over 20 years, there was not the slightest vandalism that I ever heard of. No breaks, no suspicious persons around, nothing. It seemed that mentioning the Corolla inspection online and the vandalism were most likely connected, like it was a message. Maybe they got scared off when they must have tripped a motion detector light in the backyard. So this is from Alden Olson. Is that another coincidence? As soon as he mentions this information online, he gets his yard vandalized? What do you got, Sid? Unless he's lying, of course. Unless he's lying about that. Nothing? No thoughts, Sid?
I'm still postulating. Please continue.
Okay. So basically, Alden is postulating this theory that if the police knew the Saturn might have been involved in the Petrit Vasi hit and run, they would want to keep tabs on the Saturn's owner, Fred Murray, right? So let's say the Hadley accident, the vehicle's registered to it's in Fred Murray's name, so they run Fred Murray's name and find out that he owns a Saturn as well. And if they were already investigating the Petrit Vasi hit and run, they would have his name in the system. Now, would they also know about Maura Murray? Because if they have the other drivers that are on the insurance, we don't know. It's weird, though. There was a 3-year-old Geo Prism that they were allegedly interested in buying. So this was mentioned in a news account. This is from the Mary Beth Conway article in the Whitman Hanson Express, July 12, 2007. Fred came to UMass that weekend to help Maura go car shopping. Maura's black 96 Saturn sedan was in rough shape, running on just 3 cylinders. Maura drove the Saturn as little as possible. The father and daughter were looking at a 3-year-old Geo Prism. She would have had a new car by next week, Fred said later. After a day of car shopping on Saturday, the two had dinner at the Amherst Brewing Company on North Pleasant Street in downtown Amherst. Each time Fred visited Maura, their routine included trying another of the many local brew pubs in the area. Maura's friend, Kate Markopoulos, joined them at the restaurant later that night. After dinner and drinks, Maura's father was ready to head back to the Quality Inn, a motel on Russell Street in neighboring Hadley. Fred offered Maura his new Toyota Corolla to drive for the evening. Maura dropped her father off at the motel and returned with her friend to UMass. Back on campus, Maura attended a small party in the dorm with Kate and their friends. The girls were chatting and drinking sky blue malt mixed with wine. Friend Sarah Alfieri later said in an interview with 17 magazine. At some point, Maura mentioned that she wanted to return the car to her father that night, which didn't make sense to Kate since it was so late. Maura had been drinking, and her father wasn't expecting the car until the next day, the magazine reported. Around 2:30 a.m., Maura told friends she was heading home to her dorm room. Instead, she got into her father's car and drove toward his motel. While driving along Route 9 in Hadley, Maura slammed into a guardrail, causing about $8,000 worth of damage to the Toyota. Local police responded to the scene of the accident, but no charges were filed. Maura got a ride back to her father's motel. When Fred learned of the accident, Maura was shaken up and extremely apologetic. She was upset, but she was okay. If this is the only trouble a kid ever causes, then you're pretty lucky as a parent. At 4:49 on Sunday morning, a little while after the accident, Maura called her boyfriend, Billy Roush, on her father's cell phone. Billy consoled her on the phone, though he would later say he thought there was more than just the accident on Maura's mind. That's pretty interesting. Also, Sharon Roush, his mother, mentioned to the Caledonian Record, February 27, 2007, "We are convinced something happened at school and her Amherst friends know." I've read that quote multiple times on the podcast. Seems like something people don't want to talk about for some reason. The other thing that's kind of weird about the first article, so Sarah Alfiera remembers them drinking Sky Blue Malt mixed with wine. So she remembers exactly what they were drinking, but she was allegedly asleep on the couch and doesn't remember anything or anybody there. Unless that's just their drink, so she assumed they were all drinking that, but that's kind of weird. I don't know, everything's kind of weird. What do you think so far? Is this weird enough for you?
Oh, crap. In fairness, I must admit I did think I might have accidentally passed out.
Sid Army.
Right.
Basically, I just outlined the timeline of her leaving. So allegedly, she was going home around 2:30 a.m. The accident response was at 3:33 a.m. Another coincidence. Is that the witching hour?
Yeah, but there was something saying anytime after 2 a.m., bad things just happen.
Well, what about 3:33 a.m. specifically? Is that like extra weird?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe.
I thought you were an expert on witches. You're not a warlock yourself, Sid Irwin?
Well, they weren't. I didn't take that class at Mensa.
All right, so here's the other thing that's kind of bothersome. Now, by the way, we can't. Are we really going to take all of that testimony on blind faith? They said that Maura said she was going to return her car to Fred. We don't know if that's true. And even if Maura did say that, what if she was going somewhere else and she only said that to cover up where she was really going? I mean, we really don't know anything, so why take anything on blind faith? Okay, let's go back to R.C. Stevens, a local private investigator. He's retired Massachusetts State Police. He's also a certified motor vehicle crash reconstructionist who happens to be affiliated with Amherst Appraisal, the insurance adjuster. What a coincidence. And he became involved in the Maura Murray case.
Oh, boy.
So if there was a cover-up involving the Saturn and the Corolla, and it started there, and this guy's involved in it, that could be a way to control the narrative right from the get-go, because he's already at ground zero.
That I can agree with. I wonder, though.
Also, so there's another investigative issue with, so apparently the Hadley accident with the Corolla, it was filled out on February 9th. So it was not filled out until the 9th when she went missing. And if she wasn't the one that drove up to New Hampshire and there was some kind of bizarre plan in place and bizarre cover-up, are they covering their tracks early?
I wonder. Yeah, potentially so, yes. That could have occurred. Perhaps, again, Moira may not have been there and they had to rush, or she may have been there, they had, again, to rush.
Well, supposedly, towing records, supposedly on February 20th, AAA and North Amherst Motors sent law enforcement tow and rental records regarding the Hadley accident. They seem to be very interested in the Hadley accident. So why are they so interested in an accident where there was no injuries? It seemed like some car just crashed into a guardrail. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And I think, yeah, James Renner has these records on his blog.
Again, though, could be misdirection again. Those could have been placed on said blog to draw attention, while something else is done behind the shadows.
Well, why would law enforcement want the tow information? What does that have to do with anything?
Capture timeline?
For what? A car that crashed into a guardrail. We're not talking about the hit and run, and we're not talking about the New Hampshire, the Haverhill DUI walkaway that resulted in a missing person. We're talking. I mean, this information was already corroborated without these reports. Why is law enforcement interested in them?
Well, it's to cover all their bases. Well, again, like I said, I'm not 100% sure myself. It is odd, especially if everything's already been corroborated and verified. Acceptable time. So I do understand, sir.
Okay, so here's the final mind shock of the episode. I've brought this up before. So allegedly, Maura's phone record shows that she didn't answer or talk to anybody on the Monday that she goes missing. So in Amherst, apparently, an unnamed witness walked into the Amherst Police Department to give a statement on the Vasi hit and run. Who is this person? Because if this person was Maura herself, and they realize she knows something that she shouldn't know, the plan between Amherst PD and UMass PD to make her disappear. Now, if they're the good guys, that means witness protection. If they're the bad guys, that's something more nefarious. They're going to get rid of her. So I don't know if, regardless of whether the good guys or the bad guys, did this anonymous witness, because Maura apparently was not seen on campus by anyone except one person saying that she had a garbage bag with cans because she allegedly went to the liquor store to purchase alcohol and also trade in bottles and cans for cash. And of course, the security video from this visit has never been released. So we don't even know if that was really her. And even if this wasn't Maura giving the statement, if this statement kind of sent a ripple effect that brought about Maura's disappearance, regardless of who are the good guys or who are the bad guys. Because witness makes a statement this afternoon, all of a sudden, all of these events come into play. Anything?
So I wonder if it was to start off, if it was Maura, and she said all this, which would, again, like you said, spark them to take action. Would they even want to admit to the fact that there was an anonymous witness in the first place that came in? Why not just take Maura? Or
well, there's a record of it, so I'm guessing it was all submitted as it was happening.
Oh, indeed, you know what? In fact, maybe as they, again, like you said, yeah, they have to take a record of the fact they're taking a witness statement, and then as they hear what she may say, then they realize, okay, I'm about to do something about this now. So then just redact her name and whatever other information within that, and then go about that I could see potentially occurring, yes. Or again, like you said, then another witness who may have came forward, not Maura, and here was the information. And I wonder then about the question, was that person never came forward afterwards to say that they were the anonymous person to give that statement because that person had disappeared themselves.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, if it's not Maura, yeah, that's, we don't know. This all highlights that we really don't know anything for sure. The Mind Shock motto, the only thing for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. All right, so just to clarify, Maura was working that Thursday night when Petrit Vasi was hit. She was working at the security desk, and Karen Mayotte has spoken out about this. This is from Renner's blog, Thursday, April 18th, 2013. He says, remember Karen Mayotte? She was Maura's supervisor, the one who found her nearly catatonic after receiving a call at her security post the week before she disappeared. I asked Karen if she thought it was possible Maura could have snuck away for a bite to eat or some coffee, hit Petrit Vasi, as the theory goes, and returned to her post. Here's what she said. I do not think that she left her shift and was involved at the hit and run accident for a number of reasons. First of all, the parking lot takes about 5 minutes to get to your car, and by the time you drove to Amherst Center, had the hit and run, drive back, and walk to the dorm for your shift, she would have gotten caught leaving her post. Her ID card to get into the dorm at that point would be deactivated as she would already be in there working. Thus, she'd be stuck outside waiting for someone to open the door, then sneak in to sit back at the desk. And her stuff was sprawled on the desk, nursing book, cell phone, and I don't see her sneaking away and then taking her book out again. The supervisors are always rotating around Southwest to check up on the receptionists. Thus, the odds of her being able to go get the car, do the drive, get back to the dorm, nope, don't see it happening. As I tell my first graders when learning about probability, very highly unlikely. I like Karen, then again, I like anyone who can look at this case objectively. The reason for Maura's disappearance may have begun that night, but I don't think it had anything to do with Vasi. The answer was probably much closer to home. So this is Renner's post. I have a problem with a few of these things. First of all, in 2004, or even let alone now, do the ID cards really get deactivated? Once you're inside, they get deactivated and you can't use it? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, unless it's a security protocol. So my issue is,
If you have a security card, you can go in and out as you please. You have the card. I don't know what she's talking about here. And another point that doesn't make sense. Supposedly there was a back door that you could get in and out without a card or whatever. So if that's true, then the security card point is null. So she could just get in and out real easy. And I'm not saying she did the Vasi hit and run. I'm just saying Karen's logic doesn't seem to hold up here because there was also we don't even have an exact timeline because the timeline of her working that night and when her breakdown was, that's all in dispute as we've gone over many, many times on the podcast in the UMass series. If you haven't checked out Silent UMass, part 1, part 2, part 3, you could check that out in the Maura Murray podcast. But yeah, so if there was a back door that she could easily go in and out of, as could anyone else. And as far as the supervisor rotation, if she pretty much, I mean, nobody's saying she went and hung out for an hour because she did call Billy. And if she's using this phone for all this extended period of time and the supervisors are not catching her using the phone, why would they catch her making a short trip? So everything
that's
Karen just
my biggest concern, because again, that's all to be presumptuous that these said supervisors are that critically on point.
Well, we have direct proof to the contrary. So everything Karen just cited as reasons why it couldn't be done, that goes out the window. And even if what she said is true, it's very highly unlikely, as she says to first graders. Again, very highly unlikely things still happen. So just because it's unlikely doesn't mean it didn't happen. But to clarify all that, I actually think, obviously, that wouldn't be my go-to. I think it's more likely someone else used her Saturn, if the Saturn was involved in the Petrit Vasi hit and run. Because she would have been, that was roughly around the time when she was on the phone with Billy. So, yes, a lot of things to ponder. Do you think the hit and run is related in some capacity?
Could be. Very well could be. So, yeah, I'll say so, yes. It is very odd. It does have a lot of mention in leading up to said disappearance.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things that don't add up about UMass, and we will be continuing UMass investigation. In the next episode, we'll be going over the art gallery and everything that entails. Another place where Maura worked. Maura was a busy girl. She worked the security desk. She worked at the art gallery, and then she was also in the nursing program, having to constantly go to clinicals. I mean, this is a busy individual.
Extremely.
So there you have it. We hope you enjoyed another edition of MINDSHOCK True Crime in the Maura Murray series. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure your device allows those notifications to come through so you'll be notified when new episodes come out. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. Any questions, comments, theories, leave them in the comments section. And you could also check us out, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and Patreon. And patrons do get priority in case requests or topic requests. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
And Sid Irwin.
We'll catch you guys next time.